welcome back to the Wounds to Wisdom, Healing Through Veteran and First Responder Narratives mini-series. And this is being produced by Denny Caballero with Security Halt Publications. And I just want to thank you so much for that, Denny. And this whole mini-series is about a book called Wounds to Wisdom, Healing Through Veteran and First Responder Narratives. The whole point of this book is we have 29 protectors, veteran and first responders, who are sharing their story of going through a dark time, suffering in silence, and then finding their way to a better life. And we are all passionate about talking to those protectors. You have done so much. If you are suffering in silence, borrow the courage from these protectors. And today I am so thrilled to have Michael DeSelm with us. Michael is a United States Navy veteran, dive med tech, cancer survivor, veteran advocate, and has overcome so much. I am so thrilled to have you here, Michael, to share your story because it's truly inspiring. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
So, well, why don't we get to it then? We will get to kind of that trauma and then the overcoming part, but I'd love to hear about your background. Where did you come from? What was your childhood like? All those things.
I don't think we have enough time for all of the gory details, but I spent 15 years in the Navy. I'm a Navy veteran. I'm the husband of a Navy veteran. I'm the father of an active duty Navy corpsman forward deployed with the Marine unit. I grew up in a Navy family in San Diego. It just seemed like the most logical thing for me to do at the juncture of life that I was at. I needed structure. I needed camaraderie. I needed community, and the Navy was able to pay me all those things in a paycheck too. How cool was that? And I was fortunate enough to have my first duty station back in San Diego, where I'm from originally. And so it was really neat to be able to come full circle and then spend some time there and then propel my career forward in medicine, eventually going to dive school in Panama City in 2002. And spending the next 7 years with some of our nation's finest special operators in Virginia Beach. It was a good tour, had a great time, worked hard with a lot of really, really great people, and love that I got to have that season, but also love that I got to have another season of life after my time in the service. I did leave service in 2009, promising career to respond to what I really still believe and still feel was a calling from God to find a way to create community, people who maybe don't feel comfortable in traditional church settings, a jeans and t-shirts, plain speak kind of community. So I moved to Pennsylvania, about an hour north of Philly, and worked with a dear friend of mine who helped us to start a church for people who don't like or go to church, and was great to do ministry for 8 years. Unfortunately, encountered a lot of loss, a lot of emotional and spiritual trauma in that journey, which eventually led to me having almost really just kind of a mental breakdown and just saying, I need to step back from this. I need to take care of self while I can't take care of others because of where I was at emotionally and spiritually. And went back to college, got an MBA, got a chance to expand my horizons, and I've been doing nonprofit work ever since. I landed about 2 years ago with an organization called Stop Soldier Suicide that provides free, confidential, suicide-specific counseling, crisis care to any veteran, any service member, with whatever their discharge status is, wherever they're at in the country. We provide it free via telehealth. And as a professional fundraiser and as an ambassador for that mission, my goals really are about, tying in my personal story of grit, grace, and gratitude with my professional joy of helping people increase awareness, decrease stigma, and find a safe place to lay their burdens down.
That is fantastic work. I mean, God knows we need it. We need people getting into the gap when they feel hopeless. And so I appreciate that. Thank you for your service before and after the military. So let's go back to your military service. When you think back about that time, let's go with the positive first. What was the most amazing part of your service? When you look back, what is the good memories?
Um, the good memories are centered on the some of the worst moments. Honestly, it's the camaraderie built through shared suffering.
Mm.
It's the relationships. It's the 3 a.m. Pounding on your door in the barracks room, saying, "Doc, me and my buddy just got into a fight, and I need help." And it's like, well, I all my med gear's on the sub, but I've got some duct tape, so let me strip your eyebrow closed. And then having those deep conversations in those moments of, Doc, help me get to a place where my life is steady. Help me figure out how to navigate this relationship with my wife or my kids, and just being able to have those moments. And so it is through shared suffering that we build our deepest bonds. It's also, I think, where some of our deepest wounds come from, but it's also
Mm.
in those moments that I think we have the unique opportunity to speak life into others. And those are probably some of my favorite moments.
And it sounds like you were kind of the go-to person. I mean, besides for the one who kind of patched everybody up, it sounds like you were somebody that people just went to, even if it was just duct tape. Oh.
Well, I'm proud to say that even though there was a black eye the next morning at quarters, the duct tape held, and I didn't have to stitch him up, and I didn't have to glue it up. And so, who this person will remain anonymous to protect the guilty. He knows who he is and where he's at. He doesn't even have a scar on his eyebrow. You can't even see it anymore. It's great.
Oh, very good,
But
Doc.
I have been lucky. I have been fortunate to be a confessor for some and a vault for others. And it's not a responsibility that I've ever taken lightly or with glibness, but rather it's a solemn responsibility to be a safe place. The challenge with some of that is making sure that I build community around me where I have the safe place. And when I reflect on that next season of my life when I was in ministry, I didn't have those safe places to lay my burdens down. And so I think it's important. If there's anything I would encourage people to take away from these stories that we've shared is we are resilient. Our nature is resilient, but our need for community is great, and we need to find a way to continue
Mm.
to build that.
Yes, that's so interesting because that is your story, isn't it? I mean, you eventually, why don't we go back to when you had a breakdown in ministry? You didn't have maybe the
Hmm.
camaraderie that you needed at the time, or what do you feel like happened at that point?
I feel like I was not in a place where I was processing my emotional grief in a healthy way. So the nitty gritty is that I lost my mentor and my mother on the same day, minutes apart.
Mm.
My mother to lupus and chronic disease, and my mentor to cancer. Walking out of that hospital room with my mentor and his family, and then answering the call to my stepfather, hearing the news. Um, I
Mm.
packaged all of that up, and I did what I think so many of us are taught to do, but aren't taught to undo, and that's to respond in the moment of crisis and put those in a box and move forward. But I never went back and learned how to unpack those boxes, and I never went back to a place where I uh, could process these things. And so um, I think it was in those moments that in my desire for community, I didn't know where I felt safe, and I didn't know where safe was, and I didn't know how to create safe, because I think we get to a point when we incur so much trauma that we become paralyzed. Like we're not sure, like, do we move forward? Do we step back? Do we side to the side? Where do we go? And we just end up sitting in that tension, sitting in that pain, and it just becomes crushing because we don't know how to move out of it.
And so, what was the catalyst then of you starting to unpack all this?
So for me, I had the fortunate opportunity to take a couple weeks off away from work, away from ministry. I went back to San Diego. I spent some time on the beach. I spent some time on the pier, and I went to a conference where the speaker he'd said something that resonated really, really deeply. Not just about you're not alone in your trauma, and it's okay in your trauma to put it down. I just didn't know where to put it down. I had anonymously submitted a help request, and they tracked me down. If you're a person of faith, you might have heard the phrase a God wink. I think it was a God wink, and God kind of orchestrated like, hey, here's your off ramp, here's your safe place to go process. And I got 3 days of counseling that I didn't sign up for, that I didn't expect I was going to get, and I got permission. I got permission to not just put the burden down, but permission to feel the way I was feeling. And that, that spurred some movement in me to get some professional counseling, to get, it's called cognitive processing therapy, where I would write out my story and I would identify these stuck points, these trigger points, and then really start to unpack the lie-based thoughts, like, eliminating the words would have, could have, and should have, because what's done is done, and we're called to be in the present. We're called to be here in the moment. And so I think, that was the catalyst to getting me to a place of being healthy again. And it's been a catalyst to remind me to have healthy boundaries, to help set healthy margins, but also to be that voice to others. Even though I'm not professionally in ministry anymore, I'm not a professional Christian. I have many friends who are, and I spend a lot of time making sure that they get the rest and the break that they need, that they are setting the boundaries, that they are taking the time off that they need to process. And sometimes being, again, that confessor and that vault of information when needed.
It's huge, isn't it? I mean, just if somebody is going through something and they're feeling stuck and lost, to just know that they are being seen, they're being heard, they're being understood, and they do feel safe. I mean, I think what you're giving them a gift for sure. I mean, it's huge. So now, did this happen before your cancer diagnosis or after?
Yes. Yes. So this was, I left the service in 2009. I left ministry in 2016, 2017. And then I didn't develop cancer until 2021.
That's right. That was very recent.
So,
and that was how did
not
that
so
go for
recent that
you?
the hair didn't grow back.
All right. You
Well,
were
I mean,
saying you
how does
missed your
cancer go for
eyelash.
anybody?
You said you missed your eyelashes a lot.
Yes. Yeah, you never realize how much your eyelashes protect your eyes from foreign objects and debris. It's the last thing I thought I would miss, but it was actually top there on. I'm really thankful that through my cancer journey, that number one, my mentor who passed away to cancer in 2016, his journey was informing my journey at the time, 5 years later, and that I had at that point built a network of friends around me to have community. I think it was actually very fortuitous that we were in the middle of COVID, because COVID shut all of us down and it forced all of us to reevaluate and renegotiate what our relationships looked like. And my friends that I used to work out with every morning, we resorted to Zoom at 5 a.m. on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays and Fridays. And we had a daily check-in, even if it was just 30 minutes of like, hey, I've got a total garbage day, or I don't feel really good, or hey, everything is amazing, we're going to go do this thing. I was really fortunate to have these three guys that we'd already built this rhythm of connecting. And so when I got the diagnosis, when I got sick, and we just kind of kept that rhythm going. And they reminded me that I wasn't a cancer patient, that I was someone who was loved and valuable and had worthy options and opinions and influence. They gave me grace when I felt really, really downtrodden, and got COVID in the middle of my 6 rounds of chemo, and was there to encourage me. Again, how do you navigate a life-threatening issue? I think all of us, you try to. For me, here's what I boiled it down to, and you'll read about this. It's you keep your world small. You recognize that you don't control a lot, and you can only control what you can control right in front of you. And so, as an extrovert, I value my time with people, and if I'm in a bad headspace, people don't want to be around me. And so I need to make sure that I'm not putting on a face saying like, hey, everything's great. I'm just saying, hey, I'm in a suck place right now, but I need to be around people. And so I'm going to do what I can to be positive and to be encouraging and be present in the moment. And, you have the decision every morning. You can't necessarily affect the way you feel physically, emotionally, spiritually, but you can affect how you respond.
Mm.
You can respond to be fully present, or you can respond by closing in. You can respond by putting one foot forward and continuing to move forward, or you can respond by saying, hey, I quit and I'm done. And so, I got through that season because I had friends to hold me accountable and to walk with me in the journey, to remind me that, you need to be present. You need to be in a certain headspace, and it's okay when you're not, but it's not okay to stay there either.
Mm.
I also have the most amazing wife who was so good to make sure that, I never went to treatment by myself. If I needed to have ramen after my treatment, I did. If I needed a couch day after treatment, I got it. And I had a really, really, really good dog who
Oh,
made me get up and walk him every day, and cuddled me, and was my go-to war buddy. So
oh, that's great.
the dog is gone, the wife remains, the cancer is
Oh,
gone, and I've
very good.
been in remission 3 years in August.
Fantastic.
So
That's so good to hear. I can only
for
imagine
sure.
that was a tough journey. And I love the points that you said. You really did surround yourself with people that just didn't treat you like a sick cancer patient, but just somebody who was contributing and was okay when you had hard days. And then you
Hmm.
also sounds like you really owned this journey and being very honest where you were at, but also just choosing to be positive also. I mean, just, you know, yeah. So um, that's a great thing to share, because I think a lot of times we don't know how to navigate these hard times and how to show up. And especially like you said, you're an extrovert and it was COVID and you had to deal with this cancer diagnosis. So that's a lot. I'm glad you have a very supportive wife and you had a wonderful dog. Um, Dogs are great too, aren't they? Supportive wives and or spouse and dogs.
We don't
Yeah.
deserve them.
Well, it's good
Yeah,
to
we don't
hear
deserve
your
them.
journey. I mean, it's just it's very encouraging and positive, great nuggets there. I'm curious too. So you went on to stop soldier suicide, and have you
Hmm.
learned more? Have you seen patterns with a lot of the people calling in or the people that you have dealt with? Um, what have you learned from your time there about suicide and suffering in
Well,
silence?
hmm. What have I learned? Well, number one, I'm thankful that as a professional fundraiser, I'm not working directly with the clients, because
Okay.
I don't know that my heart and my emotional health could handle that. But that doesn't mean that I'm not closely involved with the understanding the statistics and understanding the research, and we do track everything. And so um, what we find is that the transition experience from service to civilian life is jarring. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. Um, what we find in that, though, is that the folks that have had the most difficult transitions are, number one, obviously the people who need our services most likely, because it's usually through a bad conduct discharge or a significant incident that they found themselves in a place needing care and not having access.
Mm,
Um, but also that a lot of folks they don't have a they don't have a plan or someone to hold them accountable to a plan when they transition from one thing to the next. And so I think one of the things that we've learned there is that there's value in not winging it, but in planning your process in your next season, right? And
mm,
I had a plan, and I had people hold me accountable to my transition, and it was still a jarring experience. I grew up in a family of military service. To not have access to a base, to not have people around me in that culture on a daily basis was it took me a year or two to adjust. I think that's one thing that we're learning. I think number two, we're learning that regardless of whether you have combat experience or not, that doesn't always mean you have PTSD, and it certainly doesn't always mean that you need treatment. I think there's a number of things that we've done in training that can cause trauma. I think there's a number of things that I've done external to my time on the with when I was deployable that are trauma related, and that's just a part of life. What is not maybe one of the things that we're good at is figuring out how to process those things. We've and at the time, like, I just we're seeing that these moments are happening, and we're seeing that they're not just happening in service, but we're seeing that they're also happening pre-service. So we need to be, I think we need to be better about acknowledging the pre-service trauma that we engage in or encounter, and know how that informs what we do, whether you're a firefighter, an EMS responder, a police officer, a service member like I was. We often come from those traumatic backgrounds, and that's what propels us to serve and to give forward. But then we don't know we don't know how those impact and compound. So what we are finding at Stop Soldier Suicide specifically is that there are some very significant health equity gaps. 26% of my clients are women. 51% of my clients are Black, Indigenous, or people of color. When you look at the composition of the American military fighting force, you recognize that there's a disparity between those numbers. And so I know that we are finding ways to get in front of folks who aren't getting access to care. And that makes me happy. That means we're making a difference.
That is fantastic. Okay, Stop Soldier Suicide. For anybody who is watching this, they are clearly they're helping in a great way. That's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. As we end out here, if somebody is stuck right now and they're suffering in silence, what is that next brave step? What can they do like today?
So today, if you're a veteran or a service member, obviously you can, call us, goroger.org, www.goroger.org, and we can get you care, free, confidential, not DOD, not VA affiliated. 988, the National Suicide Crisis Line, has come a long way in recent years, and they've really stepped their game up. If you're a veteran or service member, press 1 to get connected to the Veterans Crisis Line. They have trained professionals that know how to speak veteran, because let's be honest, in the military and first responder community, we speak a separate language than a lot of other folks. And so you need to know that you've got people who are allies who understand your experiences that are available. I think those are number one, and number two. Most important thing is, if you are feeling unsafe right now, or if you know someone who's feeling unsafe right now, be an ally and help them get safe for the moment. There's about a 5-minute gap between impulse and action. And so we need to find ways to disrupt that impulse from being a bad permanent action, an unhealthy permanent action. 72% of veteran suicides happen with a firearm. Over half of the veterans that are polled do not store their firearms safely. So I would encourage you to, look, I have guns. I enjoy shooting. Lead therapy is good therapy. That being said, if you are not storing your firearm safely, and you have an impulse that you can't check, and there's nobody there to check you as well, that can lead to a very bad decision, a very bad moment. So, Veterans Crisis Line, 988, 741-741 if you'd rather text instead of talk. StopSoldierSuicide.org, big red button, top right corner, get help. GoRoger.org, same thing. I'll finish with this, if I may. We were built for community, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. We were built for human connection. We need human connection. We need human connection for us to feel safe, for us to feel loved, for us to feel acknowledged. If you are unsafe and you don't have human connection, I know it's probably the scariest thing for you in that moment, but go find connection. Go make a friend. Go find somebody that you can intentionally pay the emotional rent into to be safe with, because you were not built to be an island.
Excellent. You know what, Michael, that was powerful. That's a powerful share. And I really feel like you gave people so much to work with in sharing your story, in these resources. You made this hard conversation so personable. I really appreciate it. And for anybody who's watching too, I hope you will take Michael's advice, and listen and read the rest of his story in the Wounds to Wisdom, Healing Through Veteran and First Responder Narratives. These stories are powerful. And these people, all our veterans and protectors, they've lived it. They have lived it, and they have worked and navigated their way out and want to share because they want you to know that you are not alone and there is hope and there's a way out. So, Michael, thank you so much for being part of this. I'm so honored to have you, and it's so good to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah.